whereas in our population is extraordinarily very high population, and those rules which have been used for the smaller countries cannot be applied to the big countries like India, and we cannot do a conclusion about the country. So that was the demographic trends of the country. And in 1976, our country, at that time, the ruling government was Congress, and the Prime Minister was late Mrs. Indira Gandhi. The demographers and then health specialists, public health specialists, other administrative staff, bureaucrats, senior most IAS officers, they all opine that unless and until we reduce the population number and stabilize the population number, it is impossible for us to provide all the civic amenities, all the infrastructure, education, schools, health, food grains. It is difficult. We cannot cope up with this population. And somehow we have to reduce our population. See, immediately we cannot reduce the population. Population growth is something is compared to momentum of railways. You see, now we have this current driven rail engines. In our days, we used to have this coal run rail engines. It will have an inertia. Immediately, it cannot catch up the speed of 100 kilometers or 80 kilometers within just starting the machine. It takes some time to gain the momentum. And at the same time, when it has to be stopped, it cannot be stopped suddenly. It cannot be suddenly take a devious course. We cannot do that. It will be a disaster if you do that. There will be an accident. So, without realizing these problems, what they did was immediately conducted vasectomy operations with the coercion measure on all the population in the country. The resentment was so much, nobody had expected. And even male people who are going on the streets, they were caught by the police and other staff, subjected to vasectomy operation. And at that time, the government had to pay the price. In 1977, when there were elections, the ruling government lost its power, including the Prime Minister herself from the liability constituency. That was defeated. Subsequently, we had this Janata government led by Jayaprakash Narayan, and then Health Minister Raj Narayan. So these people, they have realized the adverse effects of coercive measures of population control. Then they thought that this is not the way, we cannot control the population like this, and people are against us. Immediately, they have stopped those coercive measures, number one. Number two, what they did is, first, the Health Minister Rajna went to China to observe what they are doing, because it is also a highly populated country, and at that time, actually, China was the most populous country in the world. So, we will go there and personally observe what they are doing and what are the various steps they have taken, what are the various procedures they are adapting for the control of the population. To his astonishment, he has seen there barefoot doctors. They call barefoot doctors. They are not really qualified doctors, but people with little literacy and education who are enthusiastic in serving the people and visiting the villages. And just knowledge to know about the treatment of common ailments and able to recognize the tablets, which tablet is used for what type of symptom. So such knowledge they have been imparted and named as barefoot doctors, number one. Number two, the barefoot doctors, along with medical staff, qualified medical staff, used to go to the interior villages, innermost villages. They used to go by vehicle. That's called mobile medical units. They used to touch all the villages and try to assess their health situation, treating them if there is any problem which they cannot solve at their stage. They used to bring back to the nearest bigger health center and try to serve them. So these two things he observed, and he was really overwhelmed with this type of service. He thought, yes, why can't we introduce this immediately? Because actually at that stage, there was no link between the government services and people. Directly, doctor-patient relation. There is no other staff in between. Maybe few paramedical staff like staff nurses and other male medical assistants, etc. So they thought that if we create a link between the public and government by giving some name as village health guide, they call them, Stena call them as the barefoot doctors, whereas we try to give a name as village health guide. The village health guide is none other than who read and write literacy and showing some interest and at least spend some time from 2 or 3 hours a day in the village to look after the minor ailments of the patients and then try to give some advice. If it is beyond his capacity, to refer the patient to the nearest primary health center to get further checkup. So, one village health guide, and from there itself, he requested the China government to arrange some 200 or 300 mobile medical vans, because they were fabricated in such a way that the patient can sleep on the bed, a doctor can comfortably examine the patient, and it has small operation procedures, equipment, etc. And even women can be examined by maintaining privacy, etc. So, and along with them, they can take all the minor treatment of minor ailments, medicines, equipment, etc. So that's why we requested them, and they sent the vehicles. Those vehicles were used in all the medical colleges, government medical colleges, by calling the program called ROME, Reorientation of Medical Education towards Rural Areas. That means unless and until a doctor is reoriented to the village population, because their language is something different, we may not be able to understand, even though it is Telugu, because of the vernacular and then different names and etc. So, to understand that, so to understand, the charting was a piece. Charting, 5 minutes. Charting,
చాట్ మీ క్వశ్చన్స్ ఏమైనా ఉంటే అక్కడ టైప్ చేస్తారు.
వాళ్ళు చేస్తే
వాళ్ళు అడిగిన క్వశ్చన్స్ మీరు ఇలా కెమెరా ఆన్సర్ చెప్పేస్తారు.
వాళ్ళు అడగాలంటే నాకు వినబడాలి కదా.
అంతేలే సార్, వాళ్ళు ఏమైనా క్వశ్చన్స్ ఉంటే చాట్ బాక్స్ ఏమని చెప్పండి సార్. వాళ్ళు చాట్ బాక్స్ వేస్తారు కదా, మీరు ఆ క్వశ్చన్ చదివి ఆన్సర్ చెప్పండి సార్.
చాట్ బాక్స్
అది సార్ అక్కడ వస్తుంది, అదే చాట్ బాక్స్.
ఇదే ఇది ఓపెన్ చేస్తే వస్తుంది.
అంతేలే సార్, ఆల్రెడీ ఓపెన్ చేసి పెట్టాను.
వస్తే ఇక్కడ వస్తుంది, విండోలో వస్తుంది.
అది చూసి మీరు ఆన్సర్ చెప్పండి సార్.
If there are any questions, I will answer to them. That's all. There is no need for me to type again. Go. So that was the situation. 1977. There was a lot of improvement in particularly public health service. The government, a new Janata government, they have promoted a scheme called Rural Health Scheme. They named it as a Rural Health Scheme because most of the curative medical services are limited to cities and then towns, at the most in taluk headquarters. That's how. There are no any type of medical assistance in the villages. Our people are used to get treatment from the Ayurvedic physicians or some native so-called doctors. From them, they used to get the medical help. So now, at that time, because we had modern medicine, you see, the problem is, in fact, it is our unfortunate situation where at the first advent by the Muslims, they have destroyed our Ayurvedic system of medicine. And then at the advent of, in the 18th century, after 18th century, by the British, they have destroyed everything. There is no native system of medicine. They have introduced a modern system of medicine. We are very happy to say that because that is a modern system. If everybody follows at least one scientific system in a way which is standardized for the entire country, definitely good. But to reach this magnitude of the population to the houses, it is so difficult. So many millions of families we cannot reach by the existing infrastructure, by the existing medical offices and staff. So then, of course, we have to go for this primary health centers, the board committee recommendations. And first of all, they used to have primary health centers for 1 lakh population, 2 lakh population, like that. Wherever they used to a lot of political influence, whoever is strong, they used to get one hospital. Like there was no uniformity. Of course, for a period of time, gradually the system was streamlined, and now we have for every 30,000 population, we have a mandal PH where you have an allopathic doctor, and even Indian system of medicine, Ayurvedic physician, United physician, they are all available. So now our aim is, see, 1977 we have changed the name of the National Family Health Program to National Family Welfare Program because of the stigma attached to it by the previous government. That's why we say the Janata government is changing its name to Family Welfare Program by introducing the Rural Health Scheme, where each family will be contacted by the paramedical staff, including the village health care. So the advantage with this particular system of medicine is you will be able to personally contact the family and try to discuss with them. And if you want to give some suggestions, definitely they will hear, because it is coming from a qualified person, qualified doctor. Definitely they give some value, even for the paramedical staff. By that, we can change some of the very old practices and established customs. You see, there is a custom, I told you, child marriage. Child marriage was so rampant that nobody can break it. Because in those days, the situation was like that. Even though in our Puranas and other nowhere we see that there are child marriage happen. But later period, probably people say that the Muslims, when girls are matured and good-looking girls, they used to take away those girls. So to prevent that, in the child age itself, they used to marry their children and to prevent this particular problem. So of course, now our aim is to see that to bring a change in the parents. So a lot of discussion was going on about this national population policy. As I said, the policy main objective is to reduce the population and stabilize the population. That's all. These two are the objects. Very easy to hear and very easy to understand. But to put it into practice, it is such a problem. I tell you, the growth rate, whatever the growth rate we want to reach, even till today, we could not reach that fertility rate or growth rate. We exactly do not know what happened, and the greatest thought or invention in the early days of the century, somebody found that the fertility in women in a particular age span is very high. If you can somehow postpone the marriage during that period, that fertility period, you will be definitely able to control the population in a much easier way without using a lot of medical force and then taking a lot of troubles. The finding was, the thought was, a girl between 16 and 20 years age span, highly fertile. Highly fertile. That means the follicular hormone, it will generate, and then ovum will be released from the ovary every month. And that release of ovum is nothing but this ability of the women to conceive children. That's what is fertility, the ability of the women to conceive. In that period, 16 to 20 years period, regularly there will be ovum, release of ovum, follicular stimulating hormone, depending upon its, of course, by measuring the follicular stimulating hormone, we can derive a conclusion whether particular woman has high fertility or low fertility. But most of the times, this is the general dictum that 16 years to 20 years, the fertility is very high. And our custom is to perform marriage even before 16 years. Particularly in rural areas, it is very difficult to contain the girls in the house. It is something people, family takes it as a burden to keep the girl in their house, because there's no, nowadays how the things are going on, the protection of ladies, very difficult even in metropolitan cities, metropolitan even big cities, sometimes even villages. Recently, we have seen many instances where the women are brutally raped and put to death. So all these things, keeping in mind, the mother and father thinks that when child gets mature, and there is no other aggregation. There are no, the child is not there, not in a position to send to college or other studies, because female children always would be up to the mother. They stay in the house, cooking, washing clothes, then keeping the house, and all these things. That's why the moment they become mature, immediately they try to set someone in their own family. Consanguineous marriage is very common. And he used to get married to that boy and send the daughter. So the only recreation they have is only procreation. Because, you know, in villages, there is no much amusement. So, a lot of sexual activity, and child every year gets pregnant, and then family size, the children number is more than family size is swollen, which is contributing totally to the national population, which we are able to control. You may do so many things. You see, when the population is so much, and what are the paramedical staff or medical staff you engage, it is something like a drop in the ocean. So unless and until this particular message goes to the family, not only family, male, female members, and then educated people, uneducated people, everybody should know this point. This is a very important point. Now the question is, however much you try to impress the people in the villages, that because there is a population explosion and we are not able to get sufficient food grains, we are not able to employ the people, employment opportunities are coming down, and then people are starving. All these things you may say, but ultimately they cannot understand such big things. Almost they will confine to their family. They are okay, everything is okay. That's all. They may not be able to understand such a complicated things. So at least educated people should understand this in a scientific way. And what we can do is, the girl child, what they are doing is immediately after maturity, child is getting married. If you empower women, so that they can live on their own without any dependence, definitely they will be able to understand. If they come to a stage of 18 years, 20 years, definitely they will be able to understand. That too, if they are continuing their studies. So the greatest weapon now in our hands is now to see that every girl child must be educated without any exception. So that's why government has introduced right to education. Right to education. That means either boy or girl from 6 years to 14 years, compulsory education is the fundamental right under Section 21A. It is a fundamental right. Every child should be seen in the school, not on the streets, or not in somebody's house as a servant, or not in the cultivation fields. They should be seen in the schools. Particularly in case of girl child, if she continues up to 14 years in school. Later, the government created some junior colleges exclusively for women and belonging to backward classes. On the name of Kasturiba, there are colleges, junior colleges, where the girl child, after completion of the primary education, can join there and complete the degree. By the time she will attain 18 years, and some children, if they are still interested, they can go for higher education, post-graduation education, they can go to university, etc. So when once the girl is educated, she knows everything. How can she do, what is the ways and means, how to get an employment, how to live an independent life, and how to protect themselves by utilizing various acts and various provisions created by the government. They will be able to understand. So if you do that, definitely the literacy rate will increase. The women population will not get married till 20 years of age. And at every stage, government should help. See, there are some children, after 14 years, they may not be very intelligent. You see, they may not cope up with such a laborious curriculum, and they may not be able to continue further studies. We have to provide some support even for them by empowering them under Mahatma Gandhi, the very good scheme, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act is an act. Government has promulgated this act. Any woman can go and work on par with the male member and get 300 or 400 rupees daily wages there, and it is equal for male and female. So they can go there, work there, and earn that money. That means they are empowered. They are not dependent on anybody. They are not dependent on family. I mean, their own parents. They are not causing any trouble with their parents or any relatives. And on the top of it, they themselves are living. See how much confidence it will give to the girl child. So this is the wonderful schemes government. One is Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan scheme, where under Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, actually they have created infrastructure schools for the children on the right to education project. So there are a number of schools. Only thing is we should properly educate the people where they can go, where they can get admission, and how to continue their studies. Of course, in spite of all this, there are dropouts. I don't say that everything is going on the way. Problem is still our orientation, particularly in rural areas, there is no much change because somebody always will be sick in the house, either mother or father or some old grandparents. So house needs some young person to look after them, to fetch some medicines, to arrange food, etc. So in such situations, what happens is parents forcibly take away the girl child from the school and try to utilize the services. Like that, there are some dropouts. I don't say that everything is going excellent, but there is a tremendous growth in this particular direction. And just now it is gearing up. Female are definitely their education, their literacy is increasing. Another thing is, if women force is gainfully employed, ultimately what is our aim is to stabilize the population and to reduce the dependency on the productive population. That means children 0 to 14 years are dependent on the parents, Parents has to feed them, and old people, if they survive after 65 years, they are also dependent. So elderly dependents, children dependents. Unless and until you reduce the growth rate, you cannot reduce the child population dependency ratio. And unless and until you integrate the primary care services in the existing infrastructure, that is sub-centers, primary health centers, district hospitals. What are the various non-communicable diseases like diabetes, hypertension, accidents, and some endocrinological disorders? So all these diseases are chronic diseases, and obesity, etc. So for these diseases, after once established, the disease is established, the only thing is the palliative treatment, and that fellow has to spend a lot of money on purchasing medicines to continue the further life, and it is only life-adjusted years, that's all. There is no productivity and support for the community. Instead, if you really realize the risk factors like obesity, like the consumption of unhealthy foods, particularly non-vegetarian foods, and then using non-vegetarian oils. Okay, and then the metabolic smoking, alcohol drinking, and other metabolic factors like high cholesterol, and then high blood sugar, high blood pressure. These are all the risk factors for the non-communicable diseases. What we are doing is we are taking care of the communicable diseases by integrating the national immunization schedule. Today, we are enlisting all the children, eligible children for the immunization. We are looking after them. That's why now there is a big transition. We are able to control the communicable diseases, but we are have the burden of non-communicable diseases today. Number is slowly increasing. Number is increasing, and they are becoming dependent. If you integrate the examination of the older age groups in the geriatric service, introduce these risk factors, both biological risk factors and metabolic risk factors. Screening. Number of times screening in the community, and whoever is positive, they must be given thorough advice, and then that particular person shall be attached to the nearest health center. As nowadays the present government is converting all the primary health centers and then sub-centers into health and wellness centers. Health and wellness centers. Oh, it's already time. Health and wellness centers. So from there, you can have examination for the risk factors, number one. Number two, even if you fall prey for these non-communicable diseases, you can, after initial examination and stabilization of your health condition, there is no need for you to go to tertiary care hospital or the secondary care hospital or district hospital. Time and again, whatever the prescription is given, those medicines you can obtain from the nearest health center. Use that medicine. Control your lifestyle ways and means, and we try to be fit, and at the same time we attend our duties. In fact, today, once upon a time, the retirement time was just 58 years. People used to get retired. Now, today, there is an increase in retirement age, 60 years in government service, even in private establishments, up to 70 years. In fact, I am 65, past 65, so I am working as a faculty in the community medicine and doing some service. You see, like that, in every field, you can train them, you can protect their health, and at the same time, they are not dependent on children or on the government. They earn something with which they keep their health and they are not burdened to anybody. That is the main aim of our the population policy. So, when at the time of marriage, that means women got empowerment. The really determined girl can always say no to their parents, no to anybody, till she wants to get married. That is after 20 years, after some graduation, post-graduation, or sustain herself on Narega scheme. And now this is the time for her to choose her partner. And she needs some advice from the medical persons, from the government, some responsible person. There will be so many doubts for them. What is the marriage, the various implications involved in it? When can I have what if I marry now? How many years I have to postpone the first issue? And how many years interval I have to give for the second baby? How can a baby second conceive? That is also a question. And if it's a medical person, the paramedical person, will definitely say that, see, this is the policy of the government to restrict any family to 2 children family now. That's why if you get married now, you see, we will take care of you. You postpone your childbirth for a period of 2 years or 3 years. We will help with that. She will get conceived. The problem is there is always fear. They become pregnant and then they get children because they are not ready for the parenthood and how to support them. They have certain dreams of their own to see that their child will be a doctor, an engineer, big government official, etc. So that they try to earn something for them in advance and then try to have children and educate them in a way they want, so that they will definitely come up in life. So such doubts, so many doubts will be there for them. So they can try to contact the health persons, for which there is a program called Kishore Sast Karyakram. That is marriageable age of particularly girls. There are some centers in primary health centers and then community health centers. Evening, usually they conduct these counseling classes. These people, particularly ladies and even gents, they can go to them and then they can ask all the doubts about the reproduction, which nobody can answer them in a satisfactory way. So, the moment they get married, they will be taken into the government health department custody, in a sense that a register will be maintained as eligible couple register. From then onwards, it starts. The eligible couple register, eligible couple means a reproductive age group female from generally 15 years to 45 years, we say this is the reproductive age group. Of course, if the marriage age past 20 years, then the fertility is also very low. They get only 2 children at the most, or 3 children. But by constant advice and by observing the environment and the sort of expenditure they have to bear for the children education, generally no parent will try to have a 3rd child. Usually, nowadays, particularly rich people, if you observe, there is only 1 son or 1 daughter, that's all. After that, they are going a permanent method of sterilization and stop begetting children. The reason being, now, as the integration of primary health care services, particularly national immunization schedule in the primary health care services, the child is protected from all the common communicable diseases, the diarrhea. Today we have rotavirus vaccine, tuberculosis, BCG vaccine, polio is already eliminated. And then you have a pentavalent vaccine where it has diphtheria, pertussis, and other diseases. And we have Haemophilus influenza, which is the most important organism which kills the children by causing pneumonia. We have vaccine, Hib vaccine is there. So all the common communicable diseases are prevented by this immunization schedule. The moment you carefully explain the mother and father of the child, particularly mother, you should follow this immunization schedule strictly. And we will give you a card. And every due date will be written on the card. And nowadays, you will be surprised to know that there is a tracking service, mother and child tracking. The cell message mother gets, what is the date for the next booster dose for the child, pentavalent vaccine or polio vaccine. So, in such a way, the government is struggling in such a way to distribute, to create awareness in the public, both educated and non-educated. So they will definitely see that the child gets all the national immunization schedule vaccines. So child is protected. And infant mortality rate is so low now. You see, once upon a time when our goals that health for all by 2008 in primary health care, the infant mortality rate was more than 130. And now today, of course, our aim is to reduce 30, but we are just reaching that. We are at about 40, still reduced, and we'll definitely reach 30, and further it will go down. So, the amount of confidence you are giving to the parents that your child will survive, You take, gap for the next child, 3 years or 2 years. By the time the child will complete all the primary and booster immunization doses, child is healthy, child is going to school, child is prosecuting studies, is playing, and you are very happy with the child. Then you go for the second child. Second child also will pass through all these immunization schedules. And if necessary for nutrition, if there is some problem with nutrition, you have Anganwadi centers. You can register your name there, and then the child and mother both are substituted with nutrition, good nutrition program. In the school itself, there are midday school programs. They can use all these programs. And once this information has gone to the lowest rung, to the remotest village population, you see what a tremendous change in the mindset of the people, and take it as their life, way of life to follow this particular support for this particular population policy. And other thing is, mothers are frightened. Previously, in olden days, the birth means 50% chances are there for the death of the mother. They used to get frightened. Many times, even kings, we have certain pictures, cinemas, and then Puranas, we see the child is born, child is safe, but mother died. What is that they are lacking? They are very rich people, they can purchase anything, they can provide anything, but they could not save the mother, because the condition of mother is something different, which nobody can help except medical personnel. And mother following certain prescriptions given by the people. See, if there is an anemia, the greatest enemy for a woman to go for delivery, because postpartum hemorrhage is the commonest cause for maternal mortality. Today we have a program called iron folic acid supplementation for all the mothers, irrespective of their hemoglobin, and see that its level is maintained at 13 or 14 grams. If the level is very low, government has taken such a steps that that particular delivery, which is a risk delivery, is conducted in institute, in a tertiary care institute, where they get necessary blood grouping and cross matching. They readily keep the blood for transfusion to mother. So it's very safe. Mother is also very safe. You see, there are about 4 antenatal checks for each mother. Next class will start. Okay, I will stop here. We'll do one thing. Today I could not start early because of this adjustment. Before next class, I will see your questions. We will answer, and I complete this topic. Still, there are some points which have to be delivered to you. I will do that, and at the same time, I will also answer questions. Thank you.